Welcome to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. And last week, CPAC was part of an event with Priests for Life and the Purple Sash Revolution and several other pro-life groups that are in the area and nationally, basically demanding that the medical examiners release the bodies of these 5 babies that we believe that they were murdered in this abortion clinic. And we're demanding the bodies, we're demanding an autopsy be done. At this point, we're not getting much from the mayor's office, Mayor Muriel Bowser, or the DC police. They don't want to move forward with an investigation. You all have seen the images. It's just horrific. These full-term babies that were basically, just murdered. And there's a lot of questions that have been raised, and CPAC wanted to be part of this important event demanding the autopsy. We believe that based on what we're seeing, it was infanticide that has occurred, and these babies deserve, we all deserve an answer, especially these babies deserve a burial after the horrific tragedy that we've seen happening in this abortion clinic. Our very own Matt Smith, our CPAC board member, spoke at the event, and Colton Furlow, he spoke with and interviewed speakers and attendees at the event. Take a listen.
Hey everyone, Colton Furlow here. I'm in Washington, D.C., right outside of the forensic laboratory, where we are demanding justice for the 5 aborted babies that were found in Washington, D.C.
We're here today calling for an investigation, calling for an autopsy, so we can get down to the bottom of how these children died.
Well, I have a unique role here as somebody representing CPAC, the American Conservative Union, on behalf of our board and our devotion to life, the sanctity of life. But for those of you that know me for a long time, I was one of the Senate staffers that worked on the partial birth abortion ban in the 90s, and then was part of the team that getting it passed under President George W. Bush. And the day we were all at that signing ceremony at the Reagan building a few blocks away, and we walked away, and it was a momentous occasion, a joyous occasion for the pro-life movement. It didn't last long, because we all looked at each other and said, we're gonna have to fight this fight every day from here on out to protect this law and protect these babies. So thank you to all of you being here today, continuing with this fight. But it's the greatest disappointment to know when we have success, we have these horrendous setbacks and this crime that has taken place with these babies. So we join with our friends here calling for an autopsy, calling for an investigation. Because until then, there will not be justice for these children. There will not be justice for their memory. Until that day, any inaction by the people in this building behind us, they are accomplices to their murder. And that's the ultimate result. Thank you all for being here.
So we are out here again at the rally. We are with Stephanie now. Stephanie said that she is from New Jersey, and she was just in the area visiting, and she was walking by and stopped and saw what's going on here. And can you tell me what your impression was when you first came upon this?
My impression was that I saw the photos and I saw the models of the babies on the table, and it really just made a huge impact on my heart. It really stirred me to understand what was going on here. So that's what kind of brought me to listen more.
Gotcha. And you were talking with me, and you have a story yourself. You told me and shared with me that you were actually supposed to be aborted. Can you give me a little insight on that story?
Yeah, so my mom, this was back in Peru, my mom conceived me, and it was planned. However, as the pregnancy kind of kept on coming, developing, she unfortunately, the amniotic fluid was low, and she was told that because of that, I might have some birth defects or I might come a certain way, and it was more favorable for me to be aborted. My mom was very against it. She wanted to have me, but the doctor said that if it would actually happen, that she would have to be bedridden and that I could potentially not make it. She could potentially not make it. She lived through it. She's fine, and I'm fine too. So I'm a firm believer that God is really good and that He really does take on and take in His children, and He will protect them at all costs. And so I think that with that faith, I was able to be protected and not aborted.
Hello everyone, my name is Anna Lulis and I am the Digital Engagement Strategist at Students for Life of America. We're all here today to seek justice and demand a transparent autopsy for Harriet, Christopher X, Phoenix, Holly, and Angel. We're also asking for the babies to be turned over so they're able to have a proper and dignified burial. I remember the first time I saw the images of these 5 victims. I was mad, disgusted, but not shocked. They can't fight back. Their voices are silenced. Their bodily autonomy is infringed upon, and their human rights that should be protected no matter the circumstances, were stripped. Yet we continue to hear from pro-abortion advocates, whether that be from politicians, celebrities, or your own neighbor, that abortion is a woman's right. And if it's a woman's body, it should be her choice. So I'm going to ask you all a few questions today. Did the 5 bodies of the victims from the Washington Surgery Center look like just parts of the mother's body? Does the narrative that women must end the lives of their children in order to be free or equal to men sound empowering? The answer is simple: no. We are witnessing a citywide cover-up of infanticide. We deserve answers. Harriet, Christopher X, Phoenix, Holly, and Angel were members of the district, and they deserve at a bare minimum an investigation that includes an autopsy. But not just any investigation. There needs to be a federal investigation into the deaths of these 5 children immediately. But since they're in the hands of the Washington medical examiner, all I have to say is this: do your job and perform an autopsy. Thank you for having me today.
So we are out here at the Justice for the 5 rally, and we are here with Alan. Alan, can you just tell me a little bit about your sign and the purpose of being out here today?
Yeah, absolutely. So our calling as Christians or followers of Jesus Christ is to bring the gospel into the world. It's not to keep our Christianity within the churches or private to ourselves, but rather to expose evil and to stand up for the principles. And God says, "Thou shalt not murder." We know that in this city, the nation's capital, that murder is happening on a daily basis to the most innocent in our population, unborn children, right? And so if we, the Christians, do not stand up against it and make our voices heard, how can we expect a culture that hates Christ to stop doing this for them on their own?
Right, and what do you have to say to the younger people like myself who are constantly out in the field fighting against abortion, but as a man, I'm being told, men can't have an opinion. What do you say to the young people who continue to fight but get shut up and pushed to the back?
I would say just keep it up. I mean, the enemy of Christ, they're going to use those different tactics because they can't win on the ideas of morality or intellect. And so they will try to dismiss you by saying, well, you're this, so you can't have a voice on it. I mean, how many people cried out against police injustice and they are not cops? How many people have cried out against this or that when they are not themselves this. A lot of people talk about what politicians should be doing. They are not politicians. So the idea that you cannot speak on this issue because you're a man is completely false. And in fact, to create a child, for anyone who understands biology, it's a man and a woman, right? So there's a mother and a father for every child that is being butchered. To say that that decision of killing a child or not only belongs to the mother completely cuts the man out of the picture, which I think is part of the cultural decline, to say that fathers are not important or shouldn't have a voice there.
How's everybody doing? We are present today, and it's just so much more than a rally. There's so much going on here. You guys are all present for a funeral memorial. The funeral memorial that these 5 children, the only memorial that they will ever have, as their bodies are right behind us in a DC cover-up in plain sight. Last week and a half, 2 of the most courageous friends that I have ever known, my friend Teresa Kovanak and Lauren Handy, risked their lives, they risked their freedom, they risked everything for these babies. They risked their reputation. Their names were slandered and thrown in the mud, even by their friends. And by God's grace, he allowed my wife and I to be a part of this, to help film this process, to help bring justice, and that's why I'm here today. There's so little laws that protect children, but it is just unhinged. It is unbelievable that the 2 federal laws that are supposed to protect late-term children, we now realize there is no means of enforcement. And even when we come forward and catch them red-handed and deliver the evidence of partial birth abortion, violations of the Born Alive Protection Act, and violations of the late-term partial birth abortion act, their response is no autopsy will be performed and no crimes have been committed. Brothers and sisters, if these images that you see before you are not crimes, then there is something terribly, terribly wrong in this country. As you know, there's a war going on across the globe, and as you see victim images on the TV screen, it's important to be reminded that the most gravest and darkest wars are not fought with tanks and missiles, but they're fought against justifications and excuses. They're a battle for ideology, a battle for hearts, and a battle for minds, a battle against hate and greed, and the very evil incarnate itself. And the greatest battle that we are facing in this country is the battle for our children. But the battle for our children, and these battles cannot be sold to society in its grim reality. It can't be sold by them that look like this. It has to be sold in euphemisms. It has to be sold in lies and propaganda, in emotional manipulation of women in times of extreme emotional duress and damage control. But progress and rights and freedom cannot be built on the backs of 2,363 murdered image bearers of God every day. We must see through the ghoulish nightmare and the brainwashing that is around this society. This young girl, Harriet, that I got to hold in my arms had overwhelming evidence of partial birth abortion. Harriet was named after Harriet Tubman, the great abolitionist and emancipator who ran the Underground Railroad. And this morning I went on my my phone to research her dates. And I found out that Harriet's birthday was the same week that we picked up these children, exactly 200 years ago to the date. And Harriet's last words before she left this earth was to look at her people and say, "I go to prepare a place for you." She echoed the words of Jesus, who went to prepare a better place for those whom he would reconcile to himself. And it is no mistake that the eyes of this precious little girl were open to tell the entire world that she, by the Spirit of God, is still fighting for the injustice of people who are marginalized and people who are dehumanized and people of whom society say are not persons. We will march with you, Moses, to the promised land and deliver justice for these babies, justice for Phoenix, justice for Christopher X, justice for Holly, justice for Angel, and justice for Harriet. And by God, justice for the 5. We demand an autopsy. We demand a proper funeral. And by God, let us rise up and demand justice for the 5.
Monica Miller, Director of Citizens for a Pro-Life Society. I am one of maybe 50 people, maybe I should say now 52, that have had the experience of actually retrieving aborted babies from abortion clinic trash dumpsters, beginning in 1987, then again in 1988, then again in 2008, then again in the year 2010, and then in the year 2018, and in the year 2021. I've seen literally thousands of bodies of aborted babies. I've handled them, I've photographed them, I have buried them. Every time I open up my computer for whatever, images of these babies are on my computer, so I see them almost every day. In my documents files, my picture files, every day. I have to say, I haven't cried in a very long time looking at the photos that I've taken of the babies that we took out of the trash. And then when I saw these photos, I cried. And it's been years probably since I've cried over the bodies. You know, we do take something of a risk. I mean, it has to be taken. Calling for the medical examiner to do the forensic examinations, because they may in fact, maybe even honestly, conclude no crimes committed. We take that risk, but nonetheless it has to be done. But ultimately, no matter what the consequence is from the medical examiner, no action, or they're pressured and they finally say, okay, we'll do the examination. What really ultimately has to happen is that these victims of abortion have to be buried with dignity. They can't just then package them up and send them off to a waste disposal company where they're going to get incinerated with all kinds of medical trash. That's the thing that we need to be calling for. And I want to go on record right now to call the Cardinal Archbishop of Washington, D.C., to put in a formal request for these bodies to be turned over to the church for the purposes of burial. So I'm on record calling the Cardinal Archbishop, Wilton Gregory, to do that, and without delay. We have, our slogans, justice for the 5. It's not just justice for these 5. What these babies are doing they are speaking for the 63 million who have been exterminated unjustly since Roe v. Wade. Let us not forget that. I want to just give you words of encouragement. Do not despair. Do not give up. Do not be afraid. God bless you all.
Thank you guys so much for watching, and we here at CPAC want to just encourage you guys to share this with your friends and families and loved ones to show what is really going on here and the cover-up of this story here in Washington, D.C.